Dun, 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 dun. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to our continuing coverage of Ahsoka, diving into episode, or I guess part 4 today, Fallen Jedi. Got some great people to talk about this show with too. Always so excited to have them. Of course, our usual guest from Smirking Reviews, it's Rob Stone.
What's up, everybody? Got a lot to say about this episode, so I don't want to waste any more time. John, about who I am, and we'll get it right down below to the actual special guest, the actual person that we should be paying attention to right now is Alyssa from Alyssa Jean's Reviews.
Yeah, you should all be paying attention to me at all times. Yes, I'm really happy to be here talking about this episode. I'm glad that I randomly picked this week because I have a lot to say about this episode. So looking forward to it.
Perfect. Always excited to get in, and we will jump into that in just a few minutes. But of course, I do want to point out, as the hashtag beneath me still says, SAG-AFTRA and the WGA are still on strike, still fighting against the AMPTP, the Motion Pictures and Television Producers Association, just trying to get some fair wages, trying to get paid properly, trying to get their residuals actually covered and paid, especially for streaming services, where Aaron Paul today revealed that, of course, he hasn't seen a single dollar from Netflix's showings of Breaking Bad. So yes, all those Breaking Bad episodes on Netflix hasn't paid a single dollar in residuals to Aaron Paul. Is that fair? No, it is not. So if you want to support the WGA or SAG-AFTRA in their strike against the evil monarchs of movies, you can go to sagaftra.org or wga.org. All there's plenty of information on the strikes, info you want to know, why they're fighting, and what you can do to help. In that same line, it is important to note that SAG-AFTRA is issuing a strike authorization to its members for interactive media, aka video games. Those votes are due at the end of the month and may result to another front of the strike against interactive media, which also has a whole lot of problems with AI being used and various other types of things. Like I said, you can go to sagaftra.org to find all the information on why they may be striking against video games, which will just delay whatever your favorites still in the pipeline there. The IATSE, those are the people behind the scenes, your grips, your costumes, your construction guys. They may also be striking soon due to a lot of just not being treated properly. The IATSE is the backbone of what gets film and television made. They are the structure of the actual makings of these products. They've been subject to long and dangerous work hours. You get unlivable wages for some of the lowest paid crafts. You have a consistent failure to provide adequate breaks during meals, between workdays, and even weekends. These people are the last to leave at the end of the day and the first to arrive to get everything set up. So hopefully, again, the producers will recognize that and take care of them and not add one more front onto their the strikes against them. But this is turning out to be a very big fight, so I'm not really sure how that is going to pay out. Anyway, there's SB 799 in California. There's a new thing moving through the government here, where they're trying to give striking workers unemployment. California, you can't get unemployment insurance if you are striking against your employer. This would allow striking workers to have access to their unemployment. So if you are in California, please contact your local government. Please contact your representative up in the state to support SB 799. And lastly, Paramount Plus has given notice that it will soon, okay, in the next 2 years, raise prices again, right after they just increased them by adding Showtime to Paramount Plus earlier this year. This is according to CEO Bob Bakish, Baked-ish. I don't know how to pronounce that. So yeah, if you just started paying more for Paramount Plus, you're going to be paying more again very soon. Disney Plus and Hulu has already made similar announcements from CEO Bob Iger that they will also be upping their subscription rates, this without providing anything else. So again, if they're going to charge you more, they should be paying the people that make the shows. That's what this strike is about, and that's what we're hoping to get your support for. All right, now with that all out of the way, let's get into this week's episode of Ahsoka. And I want to start off with Alyssa Jean. I want to get how have you felt about this series so far, and how is this episode delivered or not delivered for you, depending on your position?
Okay, before I get into that, I do want to say I just got the email today that the Disney Plus bundle, which includes Hulu and ESPN, is going up by $5 from to $24.99, and I believe it was about $10 less about a year ago. So
yeah,
it's skyrocketing up, and I don't know, but. I mean, if it were just the Marvel shows and where they're going, I might be tempted to get rid of Disney Plus. But I will just say that Ahsoka so far is my favorite live-action Star Wars television show by a lot. But I'm one who think that both Andor and The Mandalorian are pretty overrated. Even Mandalorian season 1 and 2, I thought were incredibly overrated. I think it's good, but not this high quality, amazing show that others seem to make it out to be. I thought it had a lot of problems, and Andor had some highlights. I feel like the writers need to learn how to condense things. Like, I feel like a lot of character storylines should have just been cut out. That thing could have been 6 episodes. I just don't get the hype for Andor. To each their own, but it is not for me. So to me, Ahsoka is exactly what I was looking for in a Star Wars show. It feels the most like Star Wars to me, without being overly nostalgic, without digging too deep in the, oh, look at this, remember that. It's a little more subtle. It's just more like a feeling, like the last episode, the episode 3, that whole space battle and Shin flying around reminded me of Darth Vader flying around in his TIE fighter, just feeling like Star Wars. And this episode, the lightsaber battles were spectacular, and the banter that goes along with the lightsaber battles, and Balen and Ahsoka's banter. And Balen is an amazing character, R.I.P. Ray Stevens. I love this character so much. He's a really great villain. And the villain who has this kind of like Jedi way about him, this kind of calm and peaceful way about him, yet he is still a villain. And that banter that they had in the lightsaber battles felt very Star Wars-y to me, and just everything about it. And this episode, I'm really curious to see where you guys are on this, because I have a feeling you'll probably be beneath me on the the party. I know that Mark is I just see hi Mark. Enchantment of Eternity is in the chat, so I know he's on my side. I know that we both agree on this. This was the single best live action episode of Star Wars I've ever seen of television, which to me there's not a super high bar, because there hasn't been a lot of great live action Disney Plus television thus far. There's been some pretty good stuff, but to me this was the best from beginning to end. Absolutely loved the character stuff. Absolutely loved the action. It felt like Star Wars. I mean, this was, for me, just absolutely fantastic. And then this big what the fuck ending with the world between worlds, which I thought I heard Dave Filoni like saying, oh no, we're not going to do the world between worlds. But they totally did. We're left on a cliffhanger. What does this mean? How is this Anakin here? Is this actually Anakin? All kinds of questions. A really great cliffhanger for this episode. So I am fully on board. I absolutely love this show so far, and just a fantastic episode for me.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Rob, what about yourself? What did you think about this week's episode? I know you and I had some issues with last week, so we had a nice long talk about timings and things like that. But how did you think that this episode filled out? Almost like a, I don't know, a part 2 or second half of last week's episode, maybe.
I've really had to think a lot about this kind of answer or question, actually, because I agree that this is like the best Star Wars show that they've done, but it's not my favorite. I feel like there's a difference. I think this is like I'm just not having a lot of fun.
Okay.
It's really good. I'm just not having a lot of fun. It's very serious. It's every single ounce of this is so serious. And I missed that tone of I missed the tone of the animated shows that this is flying right out of. And while I can understand like you can lose, the characters are older or whatever, and so you can't get the fast, quick movements in action sequences, but they do a really good job here nonetheless. But it just feels like the whole thing is just really down note, and all, with the whole, we get the answer sort of to like a big thing with their past, with Sabine and Ahsoka's past, the tragedy behind, there's like split up of their relationship that we didn't even know was going on out, their whole Jedi Padawan thing, and we didn't have any idea about in between the end of Rebels and now. I just wish like that. I know this is Filoni's baby, and I trust where it's going, and I really think everything is working pretty well. I just wish I was enjoying it on a more entertainment level than just like I feel like this is kind of matching the tone of Andor, and I'd like it to be less that. I like that this one, is a separate thing, and it does feel the most Star Wars, or at least it's the Star Wars that I want to see anyway. And everybody's doing a heck of a job for the most part, acting wise, and it looks great. But again, I'm just missing the spirit of the shows that add a little bit more of a hopeful tone all the way through, even despite like this just feels like the end of the road for a lot of people, and it's just, I don't know. But it's really good. Don't get me wrong. I really, really liked it. I don't even feel like I'm really complaining. It's just more like this is like, the grown, like, just, I don't know, the kid. I'll stop talking.
No, I think I understand, in a sense, in where you're coming from, because I don't know, part of me after I saw this, I was just wondering, like, am I getting too old for Star Wars? Am I making some expectations that can't be there? Am I just an a-hole? Maybe that's the case. Sometimes I feel like that, because I have to agree, this is really good Star Wars. It does have the feel. It's got the elements. I mean, I was laughing last week against the little, like, it's got the check all the boxes off on the list of the things that it is offering, and it is doing a good job in that. But there's just something that's not sticking with me, right? And it's kept me up, to be perfectly honest. Trying to figure out what this is, because like Alyssa said, like Mark has expressed, and I have seen in countless reviews across the internet of how many people think that, yes, this is like one of the best episodes of Star Wars on TV ever. And I'm like, why don't I feel that? So I'm probably going to be asking some questions here, because I want to be excited in many ways. I do want to have that with me, but I don't know, kind of like what you said, Rob, there's certain playfulness or feel that's not there. Sabine, I always remember as being a very kind of playful combatant. She always had something up her sleeve. There was always some like little trick or wry smile or stuff that there was something that I really enjoyed, where we don't really have that with this Sabine. And like you said, this is years later. There's experience, there is stuff. So it's hard for me to not throw my own projections on top of my expectations. And you're right. There's also some elements, and we're getting some energy, particularly in the reactions between Sabine and Ahsoka, and some of their back and forth of this experience weight of this time between them, which we don't really have any element of. So we have to kind of catch up on that, and maybe that is a little distracting for me. But one of the things that I know that does hit me, and part of it is just some of the style choices that they've made, is there is a certain ploddingness to all of the scenes. I talked about this as being a very deliberate show, and it's like, especially during some of the combat scenes, very Japanese based. So a lot of the movement, I understand where they're coming from, but all of it feels very slow and measured and posed, like we're doing poses for each bit, and we're holding those to be sure that the audience sees those moments. And to me, it just kind of slows the episode down a little bit. So like I said, I think I'm nitpicking, and I think I'm being a little overly critical here. But there again, there's just something that's not flowing quite right with me. So I may be asking some of the questions during this, just to kind of see where everybody is, because like I said, maybe I'm just the a-hole in all of this. Yeah, Mark here in the chat, real briefly, mentioning the off-screen mentorship of Ahsoka to Sabine is definitely the thing that bothers me most about this show. Not too big of a deal for me, but certainly not in this episode. But yeah, there are little elements of like that just get me a little distracted. Kind of wish I had that with me.
Yeah, that really bothered me after the first 2 episodes aired, that it was jarring to me that we had this whole off-screen relationship develop between the two of them. But at this point, we've had enough on-screen relationship between them that I'm totally in it on it now. Like, I feel like invested in it. So I'm no longer bothered by like the missing time that we had, because now I feel attached to what we actually have seen on screen. So I'm kind of on the same page with Mark there a little bit. But I also wanted to mention, you were talking about how Sabine lost that playfulness, or it had tricks up her sleeve. You didn't like when she was pretending to use the Force, but really she just used her like wrist rockets that she had from the show. I thought that was so good. Where it looked like she was trying to use the Force. She's like, "You have no power," and then like that was a good trick. I really love that scene.
Sure, it was a definite moment. I don't think it hit me quite as much with you, because I'm like, what are you doing? But I guess it's distracting. It's a thing. Again, just give me that wry smile. Give me that you've got plans in this. I don't know. Like I said, I'm being probably a little overly critical. But let's jump into our kickoff point. Again, we're starting off pretty much where we left off last week. Ship's damaged, radio's out, can't get anywhere. Basically setting up that this is going to be an on-foot type kind of deal. But we also get what ends up being the kind of big moment later on, the groundwork laid for that. Basically, the statement that the map may need to be destroyed to keep Thrawn from returning. Sabine's, of course, refusing. It won't come to that. Ahsoka, cleverly, maybe it already has. But this, I think, kind of, again, sets up what will be the kind of big conflict towards the end of the episode. And I do appreciate them getting into this a little bit. It would have felt very odd if they just kind of got to the last moment without kind of this reminder that maybe Sabine has some connections, some attachments, I believe is the Jedi put it, that may be keeping her from making the best decision here. But how did you feel about this whole setup here? And then we'll get into the whole droid attack in just a minute. Alyssa.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good setup for what comes later on. And as I was watching it, I was like, ooh, yeah, Sabine is not going along with this. She never committed to that. And it was very clearly foreshadowing something to come. But I thought that it worked really well. I thought it was written really well. I thought the actors delivered those lines well. So it got me invested in the storyline. And then also, I know we'll get to this a little later, I'm sure, but I absolutely despised and hated with a passion the theory that Marek or Merrick was Ezra. So it made no sense to me. And if he was, the mistakes of this episode are completely gone. So right at that moment, I was like, okay, that pretty much means that Merrick's not going to be Ezra, because we have to have Ezra on the far side, on the other galaxy, where they're going to have to get to them, because that is going to create this choice. And you could tell that this choice was coming later in the episode. So I thought the groundwork for this, all that was laid pretty nicely here in this scene.
Perfect. Rob, any thoughts on that?
At first, I thought, here we go again. Like, we start an episode where it's just really a long, quiet discussion about what happened in the last episode. And and the drinking game that you can play of that crossing and the uncrossing of the arms. I thought that's where we were headed again. I was like, oh my God, like, can we just kick this part off, please? But it's true that we needed to have, like, in this long, just I've complained about the pacing of the show, but at least it gets us to, like, asking the question about whether or not they would have to destroy this thing. Which leads, there's a couple of, like, pretty big cliches I had to overlook. The one where it's like, oh yeah, you can totally trust me, man. Like, anybody who tells you can totally trust them. Like, oh yeah, man, I'm here for you. It's up until they get to that moment where they can't, nope, sorry, and they really did a good job of later on why she might do that desperately. But there's another part of this question that I wish that they would ask, and that's, like, Ezra he sacrificed himself to do all of this, to keep everyone safe, to keep Thrawn away from everyone. So the real question they should be asking is, what would Ezra really want us to do? Would he want us to destroy this thing? Would he destroy this thing? Because they talk about, she's saying, sometimes we have to do the right things, and it kind of goes into the same kind of philosophy that Balen has, right? What he's telling her later, about things. So, like, story-wise, these things kind of pay off, but I do wish that somebody, could have said that, because then it leads to another cliche I hate. We're pulling a gun with no intention of using it. I hate it. I wish it would die, but it just shows up everywhere, and that's something that'll happen later on. But it was a good scene eventually. And then after this, I just like every other episode, it's like they got to get this long little discussion out of the way to catch everybody up and to throw a little wisdom in there. And then we're off to the races for the rest of the episode. So if there was one moment of panic, it was right here. And then the rest was gone. It was good from this side.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was a certain kind of slowness, I think, in the opening scene, and yeah, we'll get to Sabine's choice when we get there. I have a couple of things with that, but like I said, we'll touch on that when we get to that point. But yeah, otherwise, I think it was kind of a nice little setup. At least, again, it framed this episode nicely of what it was we were going to be dealing with. Is this question: do we take the map? Do we stop it? Do we destroy it? Do we save it? What do we do? And will Sabine overcome her personal conflict in regards to attachment to Ezra and make the quote unquote right choice? So yeah, I like that little setup. And then we get to our nice little first battle here. And I gotta say, I kind of loved it. And I also kind of liked this they did this a couple of times in this episode where they switched the expectations of when they were going to attack. Because usually it's I fixed everything, the engine comes on and he goes, and perfect. And then they get shot at and things blow up. And they waited. They just made a little noise for him to react and so on. And then he got jumped. But I did kind of appreciate that I didn't feel like I could go 3, 2, 1, and then have an action happening. So hats off to them for that. Everybody loves Rock'em Sock'em robots. So the little Huang HK fight I thought was kind of fun. And then overall, I just liked the two of them, Ahsoka and Sabine, fighting together. I liked the back and forth. They would switch sides and attack. She'd roll one way, then the other. We get the great little grapple line tie up and yank as Ahsoka pulls one person in to block, and then that comes out and they're pulled out and taken out. I mean, there was a great little bit of back and forth between them. Which I really enjoyed, and in fact was kind of highlighted by Huang afterwards when they went to take off to say, hey, stick together, you're better that way, or stay together, you're better that way. Which of course they don't, and that's what causes part of their problems later on. But I did like kind of seeing this, and the fact that even though they have not really fought together for a while, they do seem to complement each other's style very well. So yeah, Rob, any thoughts on our little first big combat sequence here?
Well, I mean, look, you said it pretty well. And then my mind just kind of went to other places with it. Like, I kind of like thinking about the style, what we were talking about, this having a very kind of like how things are happening action wise. And I just kind of flash back to like playing Ghost of Tsushima like a couple of years ago and thinking, man, I like that game, like robot samurais in space. And then then I just started thinking, wait a minute. Now and then I had the D&D Baldur's Gate thing in my head, and I was like, we need a new Star Wars RPG, D&D style with this kind of thing, you know? So I'm just that. I mean, if you can get me to like think like that on that level, I like it. I do like that we're seeing some force powers in these fights. I think they're the best choreographed lightsaber fights in a while. Like there's I think because they're kind of like the attacks in here are more measured and it's just not chaos. And the music wasn't overtaking the scenes really, you know, it wasn't like we don't always need, you know, the Duel of the Fates. You know, I think the atmosphere, the woods.
Sorry, had to do that.
Yeah, like scared me for a second. Took me out. I'm serious, man. I was like, that's what that music can do, man. It gets you all lifted up. But like the whole atmosphere, the Rock'em Sock'em robots, like it's dark. And we predicted this last week too. It was like, what's this episode gonna be? It's gonna be the forest fight. Like that's it. Yeah, we get the cliff stuff, and that's pretty big, but it's like one setting. And I don't know, it made it real, and that's nice to see that they can still do that. And I like being able to see the action. Look, when Book of Boba Fett was doing slow action scenes, it was edited bad, it was shot bad, the sets already looked crap, and it didn't help that they looked like they were just play acting, stunt acting, slow moving. But when you film it right, you can make it look good. And that's what they were able to accomplish here. And if anybody talks about like, why aren't they just zipping around and flying around? Well, you know, man, broaden your horizons. So I thought it was fantastic.
Excellent. Alyssa, thoughts?
So are we just talking about that first battle sequence here with the droids. We're not
Yeah.
getting into that. Okay. So, yeah, you mentioned the forest fight. That Star Wars does like its forest fights. There's been, if you count the animated shows too, I feel like there's been a lot of fights in the forest. So I'm always here for a good forest fight on Star Wars. But I loved it. I love seeing Huang in action. I kind of wish, since we saw him last week with the forearms and like the fake lightsabers to when in training Sabine, I kind of wished he would do like a General Grievous and just get all four arms going with lightsabers. But then if he did that, it probably wouldn't be much of a fight. He would probably just kick their asses immediately, and then he could go and help Ahsoka and kick everybody's ass. So I see why they wouldn't do that, but I still had this little bit of hope. But that would be really cool if if he did that. But yeah, it was still a great droid battle. And we did get, a little bit of that dialogue in the beginning. Maybe it was a little slow for you guys. I was really into it, but it was very short. And I felt like, kind of similar to last week, but even more so. Like we get right into the action pretty quickly, and this to me is kind of the warm-up battle. We kind of get into more of the good stuff after this, but drew me in right away. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one as well, and yeah, like I said, always like a good forest battle in Star Wars. So I don't know. There's something about it, probably nostalgic from seeing Return of the Jedi when I was a kid, but always like a good forest battle.
Excellent. And of course, yeah, there will be Forest Battle Part 2 coming up, but we do get a brief little side adventure, or at least intro, with Hera Syndulla back at her HQ, sneaking off to go and help our friends, or her friends rather. And I gotta say, this is one of the small little things that aggravate me a little bit. And that's like, what, we have a lieutenant coming up saying, "General, where are you going? You can't leave." General, lieutenant. What's the lieutenant doing that for? And second, doesn't a general have like control over tactical or deployment choices? Don't they have certain wings under them? I mean, I get that the council has said that they can't go, but we don't have a why. Like, if the fleet was needed to head over to Danab because Warlord Zinj was attacking or some type of thing, I would feel like there was some sort of reasoning or conflict in this. This just feels like a, hey, you were told not to do it, to a general who should be able to kind of do whatever she wants. In fact, when just 2 episodes ago, when we were on Corellia, Hera was all about, oh, I can authorize that. I can do that. It's very much sitting in her general position. So that's the only other thing that kind of bothered me, is that there seems to be, I felt that there was a conflict inserted here that didn't need to exist. And I don't see how Hera could be, risking her career or any type of thing. I think that's even the descriptor that was on the episode, in order to go and help. Now, I do, of course, like Carson's along for the ride because he is our Disney Plus Nick Fury at this point, connecting all of the different worlds, which is fine. I always like seeing the guy, but yeah, this is the only thing. I have no problem with Hera coming out. I like even just a small force. I just feel that the conflict being inserted here doesn't really need to exist. Alyssa, do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say that the Hera storyline overall was probably the thing that was least interesting in this episode. I didn't think it was bad. I still think this is the best episode of Star Wars television overall. But I wasn't bothered by the particular thing you were pointing out. Mark has a pretty good explanation for it in the chat, and I am okay with that. That wasn't my issue. It was more just that it's a little tropey. It's a little as being a Star Trek fan, we've seen this so many times where the admiral orders the captain to not do something, and they do it anyway, and then they end up getting a slap on the wrist, and it was very predictable. Like, of course, she is going to go and help them. So I think that was more of my issue with it than anything, although it still doesn't hold this episode back too much for me. But yeah, and then I was one of the ones who complained, getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I don't know, bringing her son along with her. I know he's a prospective Jedi. They're definitely setting him up to be very force sensitive. Perhaps he becomes a important character in later Star Wars lore, being the son of Kanan Jarrus. But you're going to bring your child along for a very dangerous mission that you're not even supposed to be doing. So I have little nitpicks like that in there. But yeah, I didn't really have much of a problem with what you were talking about. But yeah, and I'm kind of struggling to see how Hera's going to fit into the story moving forward, because I don't see a way for her to follow them to the other galaxy, because not only, even if they had the map, they don't have like the power to get there. Like, it takes a certain amount of power to get to that other galaxy. So I'm interested to see what they do with her. I don't know how she fits in. So I guess we'll see. I'm a little puzzled. And she should fit in some way. Like, you can't just discard a character like this and say, oh, well, she's not on the show anymore. Like, she's got to be involved in some way. I'm just interested to see how they're going to do that. Because I don't feel like right now she quite fits in with the rest. Like, it's definitely, I feel, the A plot is the Ahsoka Sabine plot, and I'm not quite sure how Hera fits into all of this yet, other than it's really cool to see her in live action. I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead does a great job playing her, even if it's not, it's in a lot of ways different. The voice is different than the animated show, but that's to be expected. I think she's doing a great job, and I'm glad she's in the show. I'm just waiting to see how they're going to really fit her in, and I don't think that has quite happened yet.
Right on. Rob, any thoughts on Hera's splitting from the fleet?
We could say that she brought her kid on because, once a rebel, like, she's a rebel, man. She's dragging that kid along with her. She's gonna give him, she's gonna teach him teach him how to live by just getting out in it. But seriously, this actually felt like if Mark's still in the chat, he binge watched all of Clone Wars and Rebels, right? There's plenty of scenes that are exactly this scene of Anakin or somebody about to go off, and like one guy that's there that they had one other scene with is like, you probably shouldn't go, sir. And it's like, I'm going anyway. No one else is gonna stop. And then just like they leave, no consequences. You know what I mean? This is a stream. This is something Filoni wrote like a million times during the arc of the show. So it's just there so that the character can say, I get to do this because I'm a general, to have their badass moment. Because like Alyssa's saying, like, what's going to be the real arc for this character other than she's a part of Rebels? I'm hoping that it'd be like set up for more stuff for them. Like, I think that if they don't have anything that pays off too much in this, I'd like to see them just have the opportunity to use these characters in something else that's more focused towards them, and a continuation of this, because I still have a hard time seeing this being able to competently finish in 8 episodes and everything Thrawn all done, because if that's how it is too, honestly, I don't want that period. This just feels like there's too much there, and I know I'm getting off track, but that's what this is kind of making my brain go to. But this is just a standard thing, and I don't understand. Like, is it really that big a deal that she's leaving? It shouldn't be, but I think they still want to give some sort of like that the New Republic still has, she's part of the system now. She's expected to do certain things, and this is her kind of stepping out of line for the first time probably in a while. And it's for her friends, and we're cheering her on, and anybody that gets in her way can go to hell, so that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I expected the conflict. This is basically going to happen because after this episode, she's going to have to go back to the fleet, report, get yelled at because she did something she wasn't supposed to, but then to tell them, hey, if Thrawn's coming back, we got to be sure to have the fleet at Cetus when they come back. That's my guess is that she's playing the political end that will end up having to get a Republic fleet there to greet them when they come back from the galaxy even farther away with Thrawn. But that's kind of my guess of how that arc is going to end out. Anything to add there, Alyssa?
No, I was just looking at what Mark said in the chat. If he said if anything I had an issue with Mon Mothma refusing the mission in the first place. I actually didn't, because I felt like it kind of was building off of what was established in The Mandalorian Season 3, that there's a lot of issues with the bureaucracy of the New Republic, and it definitely seems like Mon Mothma is being influenced by all of the wrong people. So I actually didn't have any issue with her refusing it. But once she did, I was like, well, obviously we're going to do... I mean, I don't have a huge problem with this. It's just that it was predictable. It's like as soon as that happened, I'm like, well, obviously, of course, she's still going to go. Anyways, so it's I don't have a problem with it. I knew it was coming. I love seeing Carson. I wish they could get Zeb in there, but I'm sure like to create Zeb, I think he's CGI. It's probably $1 gazillion, so they probably can't afford to have him, at least the way that he was in The Mandalorian. So maybe they can come up with a more practical way to have him so it's not as much money, but because I think he should be there with them. What is he doing right now? Like he should be there. But it was cool at least seeing Carson in there.
Yeah, all the Zeb. I will take all the Zeb that they will give us for sure. All right, so let us get to, I guess, Woods Fight Part 2 as Ahsoka and Sabine run off. I had to rewatch it. I think it was just because I'm so used to watching Mandalorian, but I was like, where's Sabine's jetpack? This would be a useful time for a Mandalorian to have a jetpack. And I know she did finally get one in Super Commandos, Imperial Super Commandos episode. I think it got damaged. I can't really remember what exactly happened. I do, if I recall correctly, in the last couple of episodes, she wasn't wearing one of Rebels. It must be just one of those things that's in my mind from watching Mandalorian so much, but this would have been a really good time for Sabine to have a backpack. This would have changed a lot of scenes, though. So perhaps for plot reasons, that's why they're just running the 12 kilometers through the woods to get to the nearest base. They don't even have the Jedi super sprint that we had in Phantom Menace, as we had mentioned before. That's all gone. Jedi just have to run at regular speed like everyone else. But we also get kind of our countdown sequence. And again, it's a little tropish, and maybe that's why it kind of bothers me. But it's okay, we got to put the ball in the thing, and so the ball's got to show us the coordinates, and now the computer's got to give us why we haven't done this yet, we're not going to get into. It's this last-minute thing we got to do for the last-minute coordinates. But it gives us our countdown of timer of like, we have to get there quick. Now, Sabine and Ahsoka know nothing about this at this point. They just know that they're trying to get there as quick as they can. We, as the audience, get the kind of countdown bit. So you got to have stakes. That's always important. And to stop them, we get our first big dual lightsaber fight with Morocc and the Apprentice Shin versus Ahsoka and Sabine. Which, I don't know, good fight, very colorful. certainly shoots down all of the fan theories of who Morocc was in one fell swoop, which I thought was awesome. Um, and we had some nice little bits between Sabine and Shin, though personally, I think Shin again should have wiped the floor with Sabine, especially once she lost her blasters. But we've got to have, at least she had her armor this time. Saves her from being stabbed by the lightsaber. But Alyssa, what did you think of our, I know you want to talk about this, of our second, or I guess second woods fight, first big lightsaber kind of double duel?
No, as I said at the top, I loved the lightsaber battles in this episode all the way around. And I love that we just get to them pretty quickly into this episode. And I want to address what Mark said in the chat because I agree with him. They did explain why they had to wait until now to do it because the hyperdrive wasn't installed yet. So this is just happening right now. And I personally had no problem with the countdown trope. I mean, we're going to see some of the same tropes. We watch a lot of TV. Like, it's fine. And to be clear, I didn't really have a problem with the previous trope that I was talking about before. But it's, yeah, I thought the countdown worked well in conjunction with this to raise the stakes, but it's really the lightsaber battles that really elevate this for me. And I liked how it starts off with Sabine using her strengths, like using all of her different weapons. Because if I remember from what Rebels, like she had all these different, she was like Batman kind of, she had all these different gadgets and stuff. And so she's using that at the start of this battle until Shin forces her into using the lightsaber. And I still feel like Shin was kind of dominant. Like there was no doubt who was going to win. And it was almost like Shin was toying with her throughout this. So that all worked with me. And then Ahsoka fighting with Mark. I'm not sure if we're ready to talk about what happens with Merrick yet.
Oh, yes, please.
But I freaking love that scene where he's doing the Inquisitor thing of like spinny lightsabers with the helicopter, and she kind of pulls a little bit of an Indiana Jones on him, like he's doing this, and she just like chops him in half. I freaking love that, and I again love that it's proven that he is not Ezra. He's not the dude from the video game. I didn't play the video games. I just heard other people talk about him. It was some dude from a video game. He might be. I didn't need this character to be anyone. Like, I did not give a crap about this character. I was not invested in him. I do not care if he is just green smoke or whatever he is. Now I've heard people talk, it kind of explain that that the green smoke represents the Night Sister magic. So he is some kind of, some kind of zombie or somebody brought back to life by Night Sister magic. Whatever, I actually don't care. If we got no explanation whatsoever, I don't care. I do not care about this character. He had like one line. This is not a character I'm invested in. So I am not disappointed in this reveal at all. I was actually extremely happy with the scene, just the way that it all went down. I was the great battle with ending with, because that Inquisitor helicopter thing gets a little annoying. So I loved how she just cut right through it. And I loved that he wasn't Ezra. He's just green smoke. Whatever. We can move on now. And I believe Mark mentioned in his video that, or somebody mentioned that for all we know, he could potentially come back because he might be, if he's some kind of Night Sister magic brought back to life zombie or whatever, he could come back again, which is fine. But yeah, so all of that I loved, and it was interesting that Shin too, like, seemed a little surprised by that. Like, she didn't know what Mark was. This is Shin. I'm keeping my eye out on Shin and Morgan there. I don't think Shin really likes Morgan. We saw that in the previous episode where she had this really snarky remark toward her. And I don't think she's a huge fan of the magic and all that stuff. So I thought that was interesting. She was like, Shin had this kind of like, what the fuck look on her face when that happened too. So that was interesting to me. I just love this so much. I just love everything about this. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Rob, any thoughts or observations?
For the sake of brevity, I mean, it was just a boss move, man. That's just how that's how you wanted it to. That's how I wanted it to end. I was almost like I willed it to happen. So I was sitting there spinning, and I was like, man, she should just kill him in one. Oh, she did. Okay, mission accomplished. So I mean, that's it. That's all I got. It gave me exactly what I wanted, and it proved it's. There's just not enough of these kind of moments that we've really seen when that are just that satisfying. Like just this simple little thing that just was like, well, if the rest of the episode goes off the cliff here, I got that. So
nice. Yeah, no, I thought that it was done really well, and again, it certainly establishes Ahsoka's position as a lightsaber specialist versus Morocc, and then we have Sabine doing the hey, run off, get the map. I've got Shin right here. Who, again, I think Shin should have done a little bit more just because I'd like to see progression in Ahsoka stuff. I do like the fact that now that she has her armor, as Mark had mentioned in the chat, really like the moment when Sabine blocks Shin's lightsaber with her Mandalorian armor. That's exactly what it's there for. So yeah, that was all very cool. So they're still off in the woods fighting, where Ahsoka gets to run up and have the big encounter with Balen, which definitely was something we're seeing. And you're right, Ray Stevenson is awesome in this. Just his minimal usage of dialogue for the most part, I think only strengthens his character in this. I like even when Morgan was just like, oh, is that fear in your voice I hear? It's just experience. It's just, you can tell he's a guy that's lived a life and done a lot of things and doesn't put a whole lot of ego in front of it, just has the purpose that is driving him, which is in this case helping Elsbeth and bringing back Thrawn, as we find out in this conversation. And I like I like the dialogue and the bit between them. This is just one of those scenes where the mix between the choreography and the pacing starts to feel a little plotted, especially since we see the timer like in the background and they're pausing and doing and moving and so on. It to me, it took away some of the drive, the push to get this done quickly. But again, that's just me. I understand that. I think overall this was done really well. I like the character bits. I like kind of everything that was in through this. My only, I guess, criticism on this would be also we focused on this for so long that when we do jump back to the Sabine Shin fight, I was like, oh yeah, those guys are still fighting, aren't they? But that's kind of my only really big criticism in all of this. Rob, do you have any thoughts on that, on our Balen Ahsoka encounter?
I mean, this is probably like when they find I thought that the Forest stuff was great. This is some of the best Star Wars, period. Because we're getting to see different perspectives, and it's a shame. It's such a freaking shame that Rey's gone now. Because this is he is a major talent. He was. And getting to see him just really he's like I'm getting more and more upset every time I see him in an episode because I see the potential. Because I mean, I'm seeing because this is an important distinction. I mean, he thinks he's a hero, and depending on your perspective, he is. Because he's got this, kind of attitude that I think he's not alone in the universe thinking this about this way didn't work and we need to start something new. I mean, it's something we all know. people wanting to tear things down, old systems that don't work, whatever, and they see themselves or do the Thanos snap kind of thing where they're just, you can kind of see their point if you squint real hard, but it's still crazy. But getting to see the fact that this is almost a character you could see being redeemed, or not redeemed maybe so much as like joining forces to fight something, like come back to this, not to the side of the Jedi per se, but more towards the side of what Ahsoka is, because I don't really think maybe Balen understands her and where she's coming from. The things that he said about him, her abandoning Anakin and stuff, he doesn't have the full perspective. He doesn't know her Jedi experience, it sounds like. And he's talking about where things come from, right? Or like, in their discussion.
He does seem to imply that she's partly responsible for him turning to Vader.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd like to see what happens if they give that a chance, that kind of perspective a chance of like, because I fully expect him not to do it. He's going to probably just it's going to go down the way it's going to go down. But because he's so good, I see the potentials for these things that could happen. And I want more of this. I want more shows that deal with this kind of perspective and characters that step outside of our comfort zones. And even though that saying that kind of word to the Star Wars audience is like, the hot takes would be flying right out the gate if they said that, like, oh my God, you ruined Star Wars again, like you found a new low. But like, because it's, again, any kind of new thing challenges these people to the point where their brain explodes and they spew it out all over the internet. But I do think that like watching this type of character should be the future of Star Wars, or at least a part of it.
Agreed. Alyssa, thoughts on the Baylon Ahsoka kind of philosophy and fight?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I find Balen to be an absolutely fascinating character, and I do hope that we get some insight. We don't have to get his full backstory, every detail, but some insight into where he's coming from, why he has this particular perspective, what was his relationship to the Anakin and Ahsoka relationship. How did he know them? She clearly doesn't know who he is, but he knows who she is, and he knows who Anakin is. And he kind of passes it off like, oh, well, everybody knew who Anakin was. But I feel like there's a little something more to that than that. So I am curious if we will get even a scene of, him in the background when they were younger, some flashback of him overhearing something, or I don't know, something. I want something to give us some insight on why he has this perspective, because I am really interested in his perspective. And it doesn't have to be real in depth, but I would love it if we got something, just because I'm so interested in this character and why he thinks the way he does and what his end game is. I'm really curious to see. I mean, he has made vague statements about great power. He has made vague statements about doing great things for the galaxy or something along that. He clearly thinks he's in the right. He's doing something for the greater good. So I'm just so drawn in by this character. And Rob is right. It's just such a shame that this is it for this character, regardless of what happens. I kind of hope that he does get killed at the end of the series, just so we have some closure there, because otherwise it's like, he could have come back. And whether it's Ahsoka season 2 or that movie that they were going to do, or maybe even making a cameo in a Mandalorian or something like that. But all of that is gone now. So I almost kind of want them to kill him off at the end, just so it feels right. Like, okay, good, because we're not going to see this character anymore anyways. And there's no way in hell you can recast him. There's no way that you can don't do a CGI, don't do a Grand Moff talking. Because Ray Stevens is just fabulous. I'm just so fascinated by this character. So yeah, and I did kind of mention at the top of this video that I just loved the scene and the banter between them. It just felt like Star Wars to me, and it has a lot to do with like just my interest and fascination with this character as portrayed by Ray Stevens.
Yeah, it's interesting because while he is an obstacle, he doesn't really seem so much like an antagonist, almost more like a contagonist, who's somebody who's just following their own direction, isn't necessarily opposed to the hero, even with the dialogue, like I said, that we had. There's a respect that he has for Ahsoka. He doesn't want to take her down, even through this fight. He's like, this is such a waste. But it's just that his goals are in opposition of Ahsoka's and Sabine's goals at this point. And you're right, Rob. I think it would be very interesting if at some point down the line in this season, his goals shift and maybe come in line with Ahsoka, and then they can find some common cause to go up against. I doubt it, because he's much too tasty in the role that he's playing right now. But I do see that as the potential for it. Again, I don't see him as a Sith, almost more like the gray Jedi that Ahsoka really is someone who is just driven by their own purpose, but not necessarily the pursuit of power. Doesn't really seem to be his particular drive.
I also like, depending on what we see in the next 4 episodes of him. I mean, I know that this is dumb, but I at least want to at least say it out loud that as of right now, I'd like to see him at least get nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah. Oh, I would totally
because honestly, there are a lot of good actors in Star Wars movies. There's not a lot of great performances, and he's doing something we haven't really seen before, and that's why I think it, not just because it's him, and he's gone now, but I would, if something can like shine some light on the guy, I would love for somebody to pay attention to his performance here.
There is such strength in the subtlety of his performance, which I don't think a lot of people do. Usually, if we want to get mean or we want to get powerful, we want to get ambitious, everybody gets big and loud. He does almost the exact opposite with everything that he does, and it makes him feel stronger and more mysterious because of it, because he's so calm in all of these. And isn't sucked into either Morgan's or Shin's expectations of where to go. He's very focused on where he is. So I agree. I think this is definitely one of the top performances in a Star Wars that we've seen. Well, let's get to our big kind of conflict here, which is basically Ahsoka stops the map, gets knocked back, and then all of a sudden Sabine shows up. Well, sorry, we haven't gotten to that point where no, I'm sorry, no, that we do, because we have the fake out in the woods with the fake force throw, which I thought was kind of funny. And then Shin takes off, and God, am I getting things right? I got my notes at the time. I want to make sure that I get the timing all right. Basically, let's get to the conflict between, are we going to shoot the map or not? Because I think, again, this was the conflict that was sort of paced out at the beginning of the episode. And I think a lot of things hinge on whether or not you believe that Sabine would or would not destroy the map. You're right, Rob, when you bring up the pulling the gun and not pulling the trigger is a little bit of annoying. I do get the threat against Balen to try and save Ahsoka, but once Ahsoka is gone, knocked off the cliff into the whatever, which we will get to, I don't understand why she stayed. Again, this is where a jetpack would be really helpful. She'd just take off with the jetpack and go hide the map, and then we wouldn't have this exact conflict. But that can't happen because this is the important point that we want to kind of illustrate things around. that Sabine is more attached to Ezra than she is in necessarily doing the right thing. And this is the only conflict that I really have with that. I get why they want to kind of set this up, because it is a great character conflict. But Sabine hates the Imperials, hates the Empire. I mean, the Empire is responsible for the destruction of Mandalore. All her family is dead, as Balen sort of mentions outright here. And like you had mentioned, Rob, Ezra sacrificed himself to get rid of Thrawn. And that she would be willing to counter Ezra's sacrifice just to get Ezra seems a little big on me. And not to mention surrendering it to what Balen has said is the return of Thrawn by giving this map. I get the conflict. I get the setup. I guess maybe I just wish that Shin had forced her, and she dropped the map that way or something before she made that actual choice. I know it takes it away from Sabine, but on the other hand, now everything that Thrawn does will weigh on Sabine's shoulder as if she is responsible for it. Which I think is kind of a big bit. So what do I just have issues. I get where they're having the complication here and the draw on Ezra and everything like this. I think it's a little bit of betrayal on her willing to do that. But again, that's just me. I'm not Dave Filoni. I didn't create these characters. So, I mean, what the heck do I know? Alyssa, let's jump to you. What did you feel about this whole conflict with the give up the map or don't give up the map?
Well, I'm going to definitely respectfully disagree that I would have absolutely hated it if Shin took that choice away from her. That would just kind of ruin the episode for me. It would completely undercut that big choice that they had set up. That choice has to be Sabine's. And I honestly wasn't 100% sure what she was going to do. I knew that she would never be successful in shooting the map. But I could see a scenario where she attempts, but then Balen just easily defeats her anyways. So I wasn't sure if that's what was going to happen or if she was going to make that choice. So I found it riveting because I didn't really know what she was going to do. That choice had to be hers. And I agree with Mark there in the chat. It made 100% sense to me that she would do that. She's not thinking logically. You guys are thinking too rationally. She's thinking emotionally. She wants Ezra back. And I think that in her mind, she can have her cake and eat it too. She can get Ezra back, but they'll still find a way to defeat Thrawn. She's not thinking, she's rationalizing it to herself. She's not thinking that Thrawn is going to be successful if I go after Ezra. She just wants Ezra back so desperately that she's willing to maybe take more of a risk than Ahsoka is. But she still believes that they're still going to be able to defeat Thrawn anyways. And she's still going to get Ezra back. I think it is totally within her character, as Mark points out in the chat. So I 1,000,000% bought it. Make total sense to me. But also at the same time, I wasn't totally sure what choice she would make. I could have seen her go in either way. And I think Rob mentioned earlier that that you got to think of it in terms of what would Ezra have wanted. I think maybe if Ahsoka, it might have helped Ahsoka to frame it that way. Like, remember, this is what Ezra would have wanted, which is I am convinced is absolutely true that Ezra would have agreed with Ahsoka. I would not have wanted Sabine to do that. And I think it would have behooved Ahsoka to frame it that way and mention it. But I still think that Sabine's just overwhelming emotion and desire to have Ezra back again still wouldn't have worked. I still think she would have made the choice that she made because she would have convinced herself, no, that's not true. That's not what Ezra wanted. Just in her own twisted head and her way of thinking. But I do think that it is what Ezra would have definitely agreed with Ahsoka, that he definitely sacrificed himself to keep Thrawn away, and he wouldn't have wanted Sabine. And in fact, if we do see Ezra, I can see him. I could see that there would be a scene like, "What the fuck are you doing, Sabine? Why did you do this?" I could see something like that happening. But I still absolutely buy the choice that she made, and I found the scene really. I was on the edge of my seat of that scene because I wasn't 100% sure which way she was going, and I think that if she, I think it's a good thing she's not really force sensitive, because if she was, she would just go to the dark side now. I don't think that. I don't think she's going to go to the dark side. I think this is about as evil as she's going to get. But I think that she's taking a similar path. She would be taking a similar path to the dark side as Anakin took, where it's this unhealthy obsession and desire with having this other person above all else, that I think would lead her to the dark side. But she's not force sensitive enough, so I don't think she'll be able to go to the dark side. But yeah, so those are my long-winded thoughts on all of that.
All right. Rob, do you have any thoughts on this? On the big conflicted moment?
I agree with you on one part, and I mean, there's two. I do think that she should have taken off and not gone with him. I do think that was dumb. I agree. The Imperial part, letting them win. If they're gonna get the map, they're gonna get the map. They had to write it, so they had her make the choice. But I think she should have taken off after that choice. The other part, which just bugs me, but I got to admit, is, I mean, it was probably done because, I mean, if our characters aren't creating drama for themselves for later, then there are no more episodes or shows to keep us coming back, even if it is them making what is in not just animated shows, but a lot of shows of the character making the obvious bad choice. Now, watching like Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff, they are always making the simplest little thing you could do. They do the opposite, and then at the end, they're like, "You're right. Dang it! I had to learn. I had to stick my finger in the electric socket to know that it shocks me." But to be fair, like I said, it's not just this. There's always the character who's just going to make the bad choice. So here we are. I just think that fine, they got to have the map. Great, give her a jetpack so she can take off. That felt more true to the character. Like, not making a bad choice is also true to the character, but self-preservation is too. They always live to fight another day. Take off, go find Huang and try to take off. Take off and try to find Ahsoka. Skim the water or whatever. Find her body. That the search for Ahsoka is the next episode. While they do a B story telling the backstory of Balen. I don't know, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I do want to mention, Mark brings it out here in the chat, which I completely agree with, that it took Balen having to convince her to do it. Also speaks to what a great manipulator he is, that he knew exactly how to pull her strings. And yeah, I think that's what they were really implying with. And even I would have liked if they give little indication of maybe some, I don't know, Jedi mind trick going on right there, attempting to influence through the Force Sabine. That would have worked really well for me. I think maybe that was kind of in the subtext, even if they didn't do any special sound effects or any crazy things like this, which probably would have been overly cheesy. But you're right. It is definitely setting up Balen's bit between his conversation with Ahsoka before and then with Sabine afterwards, that he is definitely an orator. His ability to speak, to convince, is definitely one of his strengths. And so, yeah, I also would be very excited to see what the path that Balen took to get from where he was to where he is now. And I'm hoping we do get to hear a little bit more on that.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to add, I'm glad it wasn't a Jedi mind trick because, again, the choice has to be Sabine's. It can't be somebody influencing her. I mean, that would take away the whole thing for me. Like, I think you absolutely have to have it be 100% her choice. But as Mark pointed out, like, that he definitely was a good, he definitely knew how to pull her strings, as Mark said. He definitely knew how to manipulate her. So that speaks to his character too. But I think if it was just flat out Jedi mind trick, then that takes the ball out of her hands. That takes the choice away from her, and I wouldn't like that.
That's very true. I agree with you on that one.
But
yes.
I do like that. This shows like what a master manipulator, what a great orator, as you say, that Balen is.
Okay, so yeah, finally gives up, gets the map. Love the fact that he destroys it immediately after they get the coordinates. Like, all right, no one's following us. Does what she wasn't going to do, but of course, he's got the coordinates. He's got what he needs. Which honestly leads us to one of my other favorite little parts in this episode. When Hera and Carson and them show up and they're heading for the ring, and they're getting up, S-wings in their locked position and all ready to do the battle. And that Morgan just looks at him as like, ignore him. Make the jump to hyperspace. Just, yes, the hyperspace wake, which takes out a couple of them, also very cool. It shows the strength. But I just always love it when a villain is like, I don't need to be distracted fighting the good guys. I'm going to do what I'm doing. And I just love that little bit. I thought that was a great, perfect choice. And again, shows the danger to Hera and Carson and them without having to really submit them to a big, long battle, which we already saw last episode. We don't need another space battle now. Yes, and Mark also repeating, shows to Balin's character that he stops Shin from killing Sabine, because it shows that he keeps his promises, which is why he is not into power so much. He seems to be following his own code, which makes him so much more interesting than just Jedi or Sith, in my mind. So I do want to get to, I guess, our big final scene. Anything that I missed before we talk about Ahsoka waking up somewhere? Anyone? Nope. Good. All right. Perfect. So big final reveal that's got all of the fans going nuts, which of course is Ahsoka apparently waking up in the world within, or world between worlds, which was only discussed, were shown really once before in Star Wars Rebels Season 4, Episode 13, if I remember correctly, titled World Between Worlds. This is kind of a big, important place in the sense that it seems to link space and time, and you can travel through either one of them, which could add some serious complications, which we can get into, but we also have to get into the guy calling her Snips from right behind our last shot of a young Hayden Christensen looking Anakin Skywalker. So, Rob, let's kick this off with you. What did you think of our big final reveal and what this might entail?
Man, I don't even know what they're going to do with this, but I mean, the only thing that I've heard about the scene from others was, again, them just complaining about the CGI and the de-aging, and I'm just like, how many times do I have to keep saying, man, if I'm immersed in this stuff, I just don't care. If I used to get all hung up on that kind of thing when somebody would ask me to watch Doctor Who, and I'd be like, I can't watch Doctor Who. That shit looks fake. But now that I've gotten older and I have a much deeper understanding of story and immersion and imagination and what you can, just accept in your head when you're enjoying something. And I just see that and I go, that's what I want. Great. You gave it to me. Oh, it doesn't look perfect. What is? Moving on. And whatever they do with this, I mean, look, the world between worlds, if there was a real gripe for Star Wars fans to have, I'd say it's that. Because it's a big kind of like mystery box that you can kind of make up the rules for and have things just play out the way you want them to. I did think the way that they did it and had it was a crazy out of nowhere way to save Ahsoka from Vader. It was crazy, but it's also a big giant cheat. But at the same time, do I care enough anymore? No. Life's too short. So I liked it, and I'm just excited and curious as anybody else. See what they're gonna do with this. I'm just glad that they convinced Hayden to keep doing this. I know that like he's not his career is definitely like some people that are involved in Star Wars don't really go anywhere afterwards too far. And he had he's done some things, but it's nice to see him willing to come back to something that is kind of got to be a little bit of the I'm not going to say what he's thinking, but if in my position with all the abuse that the prequels have taken and the writing that he was told to say from these movies and everything, I mean, these people take a lot of hits that they really shouldn't. And it's just nice to see him again. And I'm sure it's going to be good because George Lucas didn't write it. So anybody's just about anybody could probably write better dialogue than George Lucas. Tommy Wiseau could probably come up with better dialogue than George Lucas. So there we go.
All right, Alyssa, what were your thoughts here on our big final scene, reveal, and placement? Really,
blown away. And I first want to talk about that transition between the shot over the ocean and how it just gradually fades into this ground that she's lying on, the bridge that she's lying on, that with this kind of this blue, sparkly like a floor that she's laying on, and how perfect how beautiful that transition was to where you're like, what Ahsoka's lying on the ocean, what is happening? And then as things start to come in more focus, you see she's laying on the ground, and then she stands up and you see where she is. Like that whole sequence, that whole transition was just top notch, just fantastic. And I think that was such a great way to end this episode, such a great WTF moment to have Anakin there. We don't know how he's there. I've heard a bunch of theories. Maybe this isn't the real Anakin. Maybe it's the Force ghost. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone has theories. I've heard people talking about the connection to the son and the daughter, and I think the father. Those characters that were in that one episode of Clone Wars, and then they were on the painting of the wall that led Ezra into the world between worlds and Rebels, and the daughter sent her owl, who like had her life force. I don't remember all the specific details, but that owl had her like life force and kind of guided Ezra to save Ahsoka from Darth Vader. So I've heard theories that the Anakin is a representation of the son from that trio there. That they might have something to do with it, because they did have something to do with the world between worlds before. I don't know how much that would play to like the lay person who hasn't dove deep into all of this stuff. I don't know if they would be able to really go that deep and pull it off, but I tend to think it would probably be a little simpler than that. But I'm intrigued. I'm really, really intrigued. And we did get some glimpses in the preseason trailer of Anakin talking to Ahsoka. So I just want to see what they're gonna do. And I just read I didn't have time to really look into it, but I saw like this headline today pop up on my feed that there are select theaters. I think I read 10 theaters in the country. I'm assuming one of them is not in Portland, so that are going to be showing episode 5 at the theater. Which if it was near me, I would definitely go, but I doubt that that's going to happen. So they seem to have a high opinion of episode 5 if they're showing it in the theaters. Like, we seem to be setting up for something really big, and I'm just on pins and needles. Like, I just cannot wait to see that episode and see what they do. Hopefully it's not a disappointment, but so far from what I've gotten, I don't think that it will be. So I just can't wait to see what they're gonna do in the next episode with Anakin, and they're probably not gonna fully explain everything in the next episode, I wouldn't think, but we might get a little more clues about what's going on.
They are definitely playing. That was one thing that I was going to get to when we got to the end, but they will be playing episode 5 in select theaters. You're right. There's like 10 of them across the country. Day and date with the premiere on Disney Plus. So nobody's going to get to see it any earlier, but you could see it on the big screen. I would assume that's probably a longer episode then, if they're going to do that for theaters. I know it's a big assumption. And there's definitely, I think, going to be some big stuff with Hayden. So I am also curious where next week is going to be. I was never a really big prequel fan. And definitely I had some stuff against Hayden's performance, which, as I've gotten older and I've rewatched it, is definitely the fault of George Lucas and the dialogue. Rewatching even Attack of the Clones, I could see a lot of stuff that Hayden is trying to do, but is just over encumbered with choice scenes and stuff. I mean, honestly, a little re-editing and stuff can do a lot to save, in my opinion.
I hate sand, Darren. I hate sand.
Some stuff you can't save. But I have to say, I am excited for Hayden Christensen to come back. Even again, while I'm not necessarily a huge fan of his portrayal of Anakin, just knowing an actor getting a chance to come back and revisit a role that a lot of people love him in, that he is their Anakin, and they want to see him in that. I am excited for an actor to have that opportunity to come and revisit a character and do stuff, especially now with a lot more appreciation than maybe the general public was showing him on his first time at bat. I'm excited to see where that's going to go. Obviously, we have questions. Is Ahsoka alive or dead, since she just fell off a cliff, which appears into the water? I'm sure that will be revealed. Probably not dead would be my guess. It's a very mystical place, this henge appears to be. Now, getting into the world between worlds was a little more complicated in Rebels. There was this door opening and stuff that you had to do and things. So I'm sure we'll find out what the mechanics and such all of that were. My only real hesitation with the world between worlds is, one, it does get a little bit more into the overly mystical and magical version of Star Wars, which I'm not quite as attracted to, despite my own personal hippiedom, which you would think I would totally be into this stuff. But yeah, in my Star Wars, maybe not necessarily so much. I guess my bigger concern is that this is going to be a way to cheat Ahsoka into this new galaxy, that she could use this as a pathway to get to Ezra, which to me would just kind of suck, because she's left behind now, and it feels like this should be Sabine's kind of journey now that she's a prisoner to do something with. And if Ahsoka just is able to pop through a portal and show up where they were supposed to be, it feels, one, kind of a cheat, and two, also like, well, so I guess Ezra wasn't able to find a Jedi temple there or another way to come in there, because he was the one that was able to get into the world between worlds before. So again, I like the mechanic. I am curious what they're going to do. I would just, I guess kind of feel bad is that if this was a cheat to get Ahsoka where Sabine is now.
I absolutely expect 100% that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, because it's the Ahsoka show and they can't sideline her for the second half of the season.
And I have no reservations about it and no problem with it. I think that's what they need to do, honestly, to get her over there. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah. That also kind of, I guess, undercuts kind of Sabine's choice in the fact that, well, if Ahsoka can go and get Ezra through here, then what was the point of the map? She should have destroyed it. Again, these are the complications, but this is what we need for character development and story and all of that. So yeah, that's my only kind of little thought on the world between worlds. But on the other hand, if it's done well, it can sell me. I am not against any of these particular choices. I just want it to be sold right for me. So I guess that's my own personal kind of inner journey. So yeah, I think that's covered anything. Anything that I've missed? Anything that anybody wanted to touch on or talk about before we wrap everything up here?
I don't think so.
No? Okay, perfect. Well, Mark in the chat has been giving us info left and right. Thank you so much for jumping in. He does mention that there's not one in Portland, but in Seattle. We're talking theaters to go and see this show. Personally, I wouldn't go do it because I'm not giving Disney another dime until they sign contracts. Take care of their people, the creators, the people that make these shows. But you folks can do whatever it is you want to do. We'll definitely be back next week to dive in and figure out what is this big episode 5 about. I'm guessing, it's going to be traveling between galaxies and discussing stuff in the world between worlds. I still don't think we'll see Thrawn until episode 7 or 8, probably 7. But we do have 4 more episodes here. We're only halfway through the season. So there's a lot of time, a lot of space where they could do to tell some story. And I'm very curious how this is all going to play out. Alyssa, why don't you give any final thoughts you have and then let people know where they can find you?
Yeah. Final thoughts. I was thinking Thrawn more episode 6, but I mean, episode 5, he definitely wouldn't be in unless he'd like dun 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 at the very end of it. But I think I could see him coming in at some point in episode 6. But at least we know for sure we're getting him. We've seen him in the trailer, so really interested in that. Now, as far as where you can find me over on Alyssa Jean's Reviews, where I myself am reviewing Ahsoka weekly. I am also now, starting today, reviewing Star Trek Lower Deck Season 4, which just started today with 2 episodes. I'm super excited about it. 2 very strong episodes to start this. I just love that show. So I'm reviewing that weekly, so you can check that out. I've got a lot of Star Trek content, more than Star Wars. So if you're into Star Trek, come on over and check me out at Alyssa Jean's Reviews.
Excellent. And Rob, any final thoughts and what you doing?
No, I'm just I'm really excited to see where it's going. Trying to keep my expectations down and just being pleasantly surprised. And this really was like, again, every time I didn't even look at this episode in the menu until late Wednesday because I didn't even want to know. I was like, what's this going to be, 20 minutes? Like I was just not really looking. I was enjoying myself, but like not prioritizing it because, again, I don't know. The whole system is so messed up and how they present these and everything else, but whatever. But I'm really excited where this story is going, and it really feels like we're ramping up. We're still ramping up. And this is what we were hoping for. It's okay to have a slow start as long as it starts going. And that's what it appears to be doing. There's a lot of momentum and a lot of potentials here, so it's really cool. As far as where you can find me, okay, I'm here but I'm also on Twitch. I've got my channel on YouTube. It is in. It's it's got the covers that you put over your furniture when you're going on a long trip at this point. But I am on Twitch. It's Smirking Rob Plays, all one word, and I've got some reviews that I owe some people. So if you like my stuff, you can go over to Smirking Rob Plays. Just check out here and there as you feel like, and maybe you'll see a review for something rather than just gameplay. I was gonna start doing this before, but and transferring some of the content over to YouTube eventually if I can figure out better ways. But we're kind of still in the back to the beginning ways of doing things. So I do think that very shortly you're going to see some content over there, at least, for some random stuff. And Baldur's Gate 3 coming. I'll be getting that pretty soon, and that's going to probably dominate my life outside of work and doing a show and everything else. So that's where you can find me.
Excellent. And of course, you've all been watching D's Reviews, and our review of Ahsoka will be continuing this through the rest of the final 4 episodes. Next week, I keep messing that up in my notes. I can't read my own writing. Corey Shoemaker will be joining us next week. And then following that, we're going to be having Don Willie joining us for 2 more episodes. And then I think Mark from Enchantment of Eternity will be joining us for the big finale. So very excited for that. We're here Thursday nights at 6 o'clock Pacific. And we hope you come and join us. So, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the notifications. It'll let you know when the next show's coming up. But until then, thank you for joining us. And we'll catch you all next week. Take care and bye-bye.